Hello, good evening. Welcome to America Stands, Thursday, September the 24th, 2020. And we are days away from the presidential election. Well, general election is the way I should put it. I'm Greg Stevens. I'm glad you're with us. To my left is Dr. Gene Bailey.
Thank you.
Just did an interview on Flashpoint with Lance Wallnau, and he'll be with us.
He didn't give me all the answers I needed, but I give him a pass for this week.
Well, you can get a chance.
You can hit him up this time.
Second chance. All right. David Barton is the founder of Wall Builders. He's a good friend. You've known him for a while, and he's an evangelical Christian political activist and author. His work is devoted to advancing the idea that the United States was founded on Judeo-Christian principles. And new to us tonight is Konni Burton, a former Texas state senator and represented the 10th District, Tarrant County, in Austin. And she is a wife, mother, activist, and founder and CEO of the Texan News. We're excited to welcome her to our panel here on America Stands. Welcome, guys.
Thank you.
Good to be with you.
A lot of things are happening.
40 days.
What's happening? There's nothing big in the news.
40 days.
It's been pretty quiet, I thought.
Yeah.
Away from the election. Joining us also tonight is Mike Garofalo, who is with us in Washington, D.C. Tim Fox will be here later. There's so many different things that we have in store for you tonight. Gene, what do we have for the people tonight?
Well, we actually have a mini book, Founding Documents of Freedom. Founding Documents of Freedom. All you got to do is go to govictory.com/America Stands or call the number 877-281-6297. It's govictory.com, America Stands. 877-281-6297. Absolutely free. You want to get this. Why, David Barton, do we want to have these documents? Why should people that aren't historical
Well, it's the same thing we see the protests going right now over so much that's happening over the Supreme Court. We're having protests. What was supposed to be kind of a wake at the Supreme Court today turned into protest, and it's because they think that what's being done cannot be done constitutionally. They think it violates the government. It doesn't. If you know the Constitution, know what can be done, everything that's being talked about right now is completely within constitutional purview. Now, it may not be what you like politically,
right,
but the cause for protest, no. It's part of our form of government. Either side can do it. And that's the cool thing about the Constitution is it works for both sides. And if you happen to be the one in place at the time that something comes up, it works for you, but it'll work for the other guys as well.
Connie, you were in state government. That has to be the constant, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
Our legal system, it can't bend to public whim, can it?
No, absolutely not. And, we are doing right now, President Trump and the Republican-controlled Senate is doing their constitutional duty.
Right.
So why anybody would act like they shouldn't be doing that is beyond me.
And what happened in Lexington, Kentucky, that was a grand jury, and you may not like the results of it.
Well, what's interesting is everyone had already had a trial and had a conviction based on what the media said. And what the grand jury went through was the evidence. And the media, again, did a very, very bad job. As they have in many of these shootings, they've done a very bad job of jumping to conclusions and not looking at the evidence. And so when the evidence came out, the Attorney General of Kentucky was very clear that under Kentucky law, which guides every person in Kentucky, here's what we can and can't do. And a lot of people didn't even know that the first shot was fired not by the police, and the police were firing in self-defense. Now, the one who had the 3 charges was firing through walls and people in other rooms. That's a different thing. But what happened in the shooting was not initiated by the police. It was initiated by those in the house, and most people had never heard that.
Right. So we have news coverage that we bring to you every single week when we're here. We bring it to you every day, actually, on Victory Update. But let's go with our top story tonight. Mike Garofalo is in Washington, D.C. at the Supreme Court. Mike, what do you have?
Hey, Greg. Greg, for the second day in a row, thousands of Americans have lined the steps behind me of the U.S. Supreme Court to pay their respects for the late Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg. She passed away on Friday from cancer. She sat on the Supreme Court for 27 years, the second woman to be named to the court after, of course, Sandra Day O'Connor. And bottom line is she was a liberal, and she was a champion of the left, if you will. And President Trump was out here earlier today, along with the First Lady, to pay their respects. And while the president was here, not surprising, I guess, he was booed by some. And this is what the president's press secretary had to say earlier today about those boos and also about who the president might put into that seat that's now open.
I think the chants were appalling, but certainly to be expected when you're in the heart of the swamp. I travel with the president all across the country, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Florida, Nevada, and everywhere we go, the streets are lined with support like I don't think any other president has had previously. But with regard to precedent, as I've noted before, 29 times has an appointment been made in an election year, 29 times. And that was all 29 times when there was a vacancy at hand. So the precedent is very much on our side here.
Now, in respect to filling that vacancy, the president said he will make an announcement. We're expecting it Saturday by 5 p.m. as to who he's going to nominate to fill the seat now open, of course, by the passing of Justice Ginsburg. And I know the president is hoping that a vote happens on that nomination before Election Day, November 3rd. I'm going to send it back to you guys.
Thanks, Mike. While I got you there real quick, what's the mood like right now, tonight in Washington, D.C. at the Supreme Court?
Well, right where I am, which I'm on the grounds of the Capitol building, very calm, but people are milling toward the U.S. Supreme Court. I drove by the Supreme Court about an hour and a half ago. There's a lot of energy there, a lot of people there, thousands of people in the streets, hundreds of thousands of people lining up to pay their respects, and that's going to continue for at least another hour tonight, maybe another 2 or 3 hours. I know last night they cut it off at about 9:15. At least that's what a police officer told me. Back to you.
Well, Mike, we pray that it's they pay proper tribute to Justice Ginsburg by being peaceful. So what about the Supreme Court? What do you guys think?
Greg, let me see a little background on this, because we're going to talk Supreme Court a lot tonight, as we should, because that's a big story in the news. What's going to happen Saturday with the president's nomination? Will it be one of the 3 women we think it will be, and which one?
So before we go off the air, you're going to make a...
I'll make a guess at what I think, educated guess.
Because you tried with Lance. I'm going to try...
I'll give a guess what I think. But let me just take from the beginning. When we had the original Supreme Court with 6 justices, what we had was the average length of time from the time they were nominated to the time they were sitting on the court was under a week. So it took less than a week to do it, and it continued all the way into about 1920. So for more than a century, a week is all it took to have a justice sitting on the court. 1920, progressives come along, and they introduce what we call the living constitution. And at that point, judges are now starting to become legislators. And the first 120 years, the Constitution is written, it's black and white, everybody reads it, it says what it says, you uphold it. Then you get to the point where we can use judges to make policy. One of the guys who helped make that shift, Chief Justice Charles Evans Hughes, said, we are under a Constitution, but the Constitution is what the judges say that it is. And so at that point, now we're starting to argue over which philosophy do we want in there. And so under Calvin Coolidge, it started going about a month to get a justice on. And then under Reagan, it went to about 2 months to get a justice on. And under Reagan, it finally came to the point where Judge Robert Bork was denied a seat. And we remember we called it borking. But that's the first time someone was denied a seat, not because of their competency, but because of their worldview. And so since Bork, it has become a real political battle, which it never should have been. The founders never made judges to make policy. That was not allowed on the Supreme Court. They were the weakest of all the branches. But here we are today. So that's the first background, is if the Republicans go through this and do it quickly, that's not a constitutional problem. That's historically precedent. The second thing, Kayleigh mentioned 29 times this has happened. 19 times it's happened where the party of the president and the Senate were the same, as it is now.
Right.
And 17 of the 19 times when both houses or both parts of the government were by the same party, they put the justice in.
So when Merrick Garland by Obama was
put in,
you had a split. The Senate was not controlled by the...
That's right. And so what you have, there's 10 times when it's been in different hands, that maybe a Democrat president, Republican senator, or vice versa. 8 out of the 10 times they did not put the nominee on the court. But 17 out of the 19, when it's in the same hands, president and Senate, they put the nominee on the court. Yeah. So again, the other side may not like this, but there's 220-something years of precedent here, actually 233 years of precedent here, and that's what we're dealing with today.
Connie, what are your thoughts?
Well, to toot my own horn a little bit, I got to talk to Senator Cruz today. I actually interviewed him. And one of the things that I was concerned about is because we're in a time frame
now,
here,
he did a
right?
stop. I hate to interrupt you. He stopped something today
Yes,
in Congress.
Are
in the
you
Senate?
talking about the for Justice
For Ginsburg.
Ginsburg?
Because they had slipped language in.
Correct. That is correct.
Go
Now,
ahead.
if you'd watched the other media outlets, if you'd have read the other media outlets, they didn't quite report it the way that it should have been. Shocker, right?
Yeah, I can't believe that.
But anyway, so I was talking to him about, the time frame. Obviously, that's kind of what I think most of our concern is with the election looming. And so we kind of went step by step from President Trump nominating to, okay, then how quickly can you get it to the Judiciary Committee? And then from there, going to the Senate floor, what kind of tricks can there be? What kind of slip-ups can there be that the Democrats can do? And of course, they're going to throw everything.
You bet.
And Senator Cruz said that, everything, including the kitchen sink, at them. But he seems very, very confident that we can get all of it done.
His name was on the list, but of course the president said he's picking a woman.
That's correct. That's correct. And that's what Senator Cruz said as well. It's going to be a woman from that list. And I didn't ask him who he thought it was going to be. But he seems very confident that it can happen from beginning to end prior to the election. He's very confident about that.
Absolutely.
That's faster than...
I don't think it'll be a problem for them to get it done. I think they will get it done easily before the election. Because they've already laid out their time frame. This does not catch them by surprise. They had strategically laid out plans on what would happen if this came, and it did. And so they're prepared for it.
And well, this 2020 has certainly been a year of great change. And why should the end of it with the Supreme Court not be any different, right? So, but here's the thing. Brother Copeland, not too long back, prophesied and talked about that in July of 2016 about coming a year of great change. Let's watch this. We'll be right back.
Well, what about the elections in 2016? And what about 2017? Pray, hold fast before me. Great changes are coming in the United States. For I have heard the prayers of my people. And I am moving now, healing this land, saith the Lord. Things are changing. Some things are going to happen between now and election time. Pay attention. Pay attention to the Spirit. Pray in the Spirit. Hold fast to the truth. Not the news broadcast. I said change is coming. And I'm not talking about just the natural flow of things. There are going to be changes in political parties. There's going to be changes here and changes there. And nothing is like it looks now. The awakening is here. It is here. It isn't coming, it is here. And the more you pray, the more it'll increase. I'm not done with the United States. This is my country. I built it, I bought and paid for it. It is mine.
And we show you those prophecies so that you can hook your faith up to that God does have this thing. And he was just asking you to do your part. Earlier tonight on Flashpoint, Gene, you had Lance Wallnau with us. And we've asked him to stay over because Lance is described by the USA Today, described him as one of 3 evangelical leaders to accurately predict Donald Trump's presidency from the moment he began his campaign. Go ahead and talk to us.
I enjoy... Lance, don't get the big head, but I enjoy talking to you because we always have a good exchange, and I like getting your viewpoint. But what I want to know, you've heard David Barton talk about the Supreme Court justice. I want to know what would happen. Do you think it's going to go through that easy, or what would happen if it doesn't go through this easy?
Well, it's going to be a challenge. But of course, what I was saying earlier when you and I were talking is that Trump has a choice, I think, between whether he wants to risk having a great candidate. Remember what they did to Kavanaugh and Justice Kavanaugh. So if Amy Coney Barrett goes up, they're going to attack religion. That should actually mobilize a whole lot of waffling and disengaged Christians.
Right.
On the other hand, the Judge Barbara Lagoya, she's a better candidate in terms of political correctness. However, this is just my opinion, which is what the show's all about. She actually they both clerked for Scalia, but there's a troublesome quote I ran across in the New York Times where she said she really disagreed. She had difference of opinion with Justice Scalia on aspects of law and religion. But he was such a strong believer that I would want to really be satisfied that she is going to side with religious liberty on critical cases that are going to come up to the Supreme Court in order for me to be, jumping up and down on my lawn with the announcement that's coming up. So this is nothing but cliffhangers we're going through. And so I'm curious, if any of you have any insight that can settle my anxieties on this subject.
Yeah, no. I can tell you right now, no. I'll speak for everybody, no. I want to know, what is it, do you really think we're going to get this thing done before the election, November 3rd?
Oh, I think that the Democrats are going to try to drag this out as long as the polling data says that they're not losing votes because of it. Remember, everything is a calculus of the election. Everything is about the election. So they're going to do their best to try to derail it, and then they're going to get some data that says, the American people, it's kind of not working for you. Then they're going to begrudgingly have to vote under protest, of course, to get rid of this mobster Trump and his takeover of America.
All right. We didn't get to talk about this in the last half hour, but I want to ask you now. We talked a little bit about voter fraud, mail-in ballots, all the fiasco there. Even John Smith talked about that in the first part of the program. When do you think we're going to have an answer on the election? If we have a landslide, is it more, you think we'll know sooner, or do you think is this thing going to be drug out for a while?
Well, and this is always interesting because look at how we have to lick our finger and go to the wind, because you look at the polling data, you look at the data, and it's like, well, Trump is struggling in the battleground states. There's no doubt about the fact that the ballots are going to be fictitious, and they will be copious. There will be sufficient to overturn. Remember the margins of Trump. President's victory was like 14,000, Wisconsin, 20,000, Michigan.
Right.
It wasn't that much. And so certainly, a good ballot person can come up with 20,000. The key is you have to be able to cheat, but make it look reasonable. They always aim for within 1% to 2%. You notice that it's never like, hey, we came up with like 100% more votes. It's always 1% to 2%. Oh, it was so close, but we got it. You have to concede. And Republicans never fight it. Democrats will fight you and take you to the Supreme Court. And Republicans, why fight about it? Let it go.
Yeah, all right. So speaking of the Supreme Court, there's, I'm going to take Greg's question that he was going to say. So is this why other than the whole abortion and everything else that, everybody that's a God-fearing believer believes in, but is this is this why all the tension is there about the Supreme Court candidate? Is because the first thing we have to deal with is this election?
Oh, well, absolutely. Basically, the big picture, we have to pull back to the big picture. As David Barton, our resident scholar on these things, just pointed out, there's there's the historic balance of powers is supposed to be, these three are supposed to be equal. But what happens is, in the absence of moral consensus in the nation regarding what is right and what is wrong, it's called mediating institutions. When the church and education and other vehicles collapse, everything goes to an all or nothing game in the power of politics, legislation, and the courts, because that's the only hill standing. So what happens is the Supreme Court then becomes what was never intended to be. It becomes the mediator in every moral dispute that the nation can't make up its mind on. And so what we're looking at is the power of the court accelerating as the collapse of other institutions such as family and education and church are no longer able to build moral clarity in a community. So that's the bigger picture. But what's amazing and what should be a concern to everybody is the expressed intent to take the court or to politicize the court. We already know it's happened. It was never supposed to happen this way. But every appointment becomes a political extension of the will of the executive branch, and that's a very dangerous thing. They'll pack the court. They're going to want to pack the court. What I want to know is, and I don't want to go down this road, but how much time does it take for them to be able to come up with some of these? If they ever had power, how long would it take for them to be able to pack the court and come up with it? If they have the Senate, I guess they could go ahead and start right away. This should urge everyone to want to get out and get engaged in this whole election.
That's absolutely right.
Lance, this is Greg Stevens. I got to looking at this. If it did go to the Supreme Court, and currently we're 4-4, this is me, my opinion. I'm throwing Roberts on the liberal side now. That's just the way I think now. 4-4, you need that ninth justice to make a decision, don't you?
Oh, you have to have it. You have to have the ninth. And boy, what you want to make sure is that you don't have a justice that is going to end up, waffling when it comes to the issue of the president saying there is serious voter violation going on, and we don't believe these ballots are reflective of the actual election. The American people are going to be looking for clarity and the left, I'm sorry to say, will never be happy with a result that they don't like. But I'm concerned about the other half of America that has been watching what the president's been going through from Russia all the way to this day. They want to see the institutions at least have some semblance of solvency. And this is what Attorney General Barr was talking about. He said the real issue in America is we have to have confidence in these institutions. We understand that politics is hardball and that there's all kinds of chicanery. But when you can't trust the courts and you can't trust criminal justice and the FBI to do their job, you have a serious collapse of confidence in culture. And those of us that are praying for America have to really know that God does not intend for that to happen. We have to set our hearts and our faith in the preservation of those institutions, because that's what America has that keeps us enduring during between election cycles.
Lance, I know you look at stuff like this. I always look at puzzle pieces, and Ruth Bader Ginsburg leaves on New Year, Rosh Hashanah, and then the president is going to be making a pick or putting his name out on the Day of Atonement. Any thoughts about that?
My gosh, let me tell you something, my friend. You have just said it. The fact that we're in the cycle that we're in, where I was going to say the Chinese New Year, I'm part Jewish, I should know better than that. The Hebrew New Year, Rosh Hashanah. But the fact that we're coming up to this 40, remember this, the Day of Atonement, if I'm not mistaken, we're going to be seeing that it's like 40 days before the election. It's almost like 40 days for Nineveh with Jonah. Do you know that on the Day of Atonement, every Jewish synagogue, Protestant synagogue, every synagogue is going to be reading Jonah the prophet? Yep. Because every synagogue wants to be reminded, Jonah the prophet. And what we're talking about is God going to preserve America? The church is the tipping point. 40 days before the election, the Day of Atonement is going to be taking place, and we will be beseeching God for mercy on the nation. And how that aligns, because the Day of Atonement was the day when the sins of the nation were given the covering of the blood.
Yes, and that's the day that the president has picked to announce the next Supreme Court justice. I find the coincidence a little striking. If I could ask you one more question before I get this back to Gene. We have a debate coming up next week. Any thoughts about what we're going to see on the debate?
Oh, well, you're going to see, and remember this is what people have to realize. It's every incendiary line that comes out of Biden, of candidate Biden's mouth, is already scripted. It's not spontaneous, and they are designed to be a gotcha soundbite against the president. What we have to see is whether the president is going to respond with a characteristic response that is as powerful and equally quotable. I honestly believe that the greatest risk in this debate is going to be if a candidate Biden loses his train of thought at some point during the conversation. That is going to be a defining moment.
All right, Lance, I so appreciate you. Listen, if you want to know more about Lance Wallnau, all that he does, you need to follow him on social media, lancewallnau.com. I'm sure you can find all about it. His upcoming book, God's Chaos Code, coming out real soon, right, Lance?
Oh my gosh! I mean, as we speak, as soon as I leave here, I go sign it.
There we go. All right, I'm expecting mine on my desk very soon. I want to ask Konni. You're just sitting there, just listening to Lance. You have to disagree with something.
Well, I was thinking as he was talking about, I think you asked the importance of the Supreme Court, particularly to those on the left. I personally think abortion is their holy grail.
Sure.
Right? They act as if,
That's their religion.
Exactly. That is correct. And I think that's what it's always about for them, whether they want to admit that or not. I did just notice the other day, it was kind of interesting that somebody tweeted that, oh, hey, everybody, the media has now changed the Democrats' talking points. It's now about Obamacare. They're all acting like, it's about Obamacare. But at the end of the day, it's always about abortion for the left. They want to keep that. They do not want to lose the ability to get rid of an unborn child, right? I was going to use language, but I decided not to. So anyway, I think that's what it's always about for them, and that's why it gets so extremist and so wacky and crazy during the nomination process, as it did with Kavanaugh. I mean, my gosh, y'all saw it. It was insanity.
And don't forget who was leading the charge on that. It was Kamala Harris.
That's right.
Oh, right.
On that committee. I mean, she was
Right.
brutal.
Do you think we're going to see that again?
I tell you what's going to happen. This one is going to be uglier than anything you've seen. And I don't
because
care.
It's all on the table now.
I don't care if they take Mary, the mother of Jesus, or Mother Teresa. You're going to see people come out and testify that this is what they did to me and this is how they abused it. It's going to get ugly because Konni hit it. This is the thing. Do you remember what happened when when the prophet Baal kept falling down and how people just got outraged when you messed with their prophet, and they had that riot in Ephesus when Paul was there and they said, you come after the goddess Diana. This is their goddess. And I will tell you that if this justice gets confirmed, and the one we think is going to be there, if she gets confirmed and Trump is reelected, I think within 3 years, Roe v. Wade will be gone. Now, don't think that means abortion's gone in America.
No.
They'll probably get it back to the states.
That's right. Exactly.
But at least you'll have probably about 22 states that will end it, about
Which is
19
what the
that will keep it.
Constitution said should happen.
Well, it actually should be more than that because Constitution and Declaration guarantee the inalienable right to life. So the Founding Fathers themselves passed laws against abortion in their day because they knew that was an inalienable right. Inalienable rights are not subject to the Constitution. They go above that. And so I think this is the biggest battle you'll see. But again, if you just have 8 justices, this is what we had in 1876 with Rutherford B. Hayes, where that there had been 9 justices, 1 left, and then we go 6 months without a president because it's a split court.
All right. Before we take a break, Lance, I want to thank you for being with us. LanceWallnau.com. I'm going to ask you one time. You want to make a prediction who it is Saturday?
Well, I'm praying it. I really am. As I'm meditating on it, I'm praying it's going to be Amy, and it's going to be a mess.
There you go. Lance Wallnau, LanceWallnau.com. The book is coming out, and you don't want to miss it. All right, we're going to be back with more America Stands election coverage in the spirit of faith right after this.
Are you looking for victory? Watch 24/7 Word of Faith teaching free on Victory. Find us on several over-the-air channels, Roku, Apple TV, Amazon Fire devices, the Victory app, YouTube Live, iHeartRadio, TuneIn, govictory.com, and kcm.org/watch/live. We're using every available voice so you can experience victory.
The most important election of our lifetime.
The most important election of my lifetime.
On November 3rd, voters will determine the future of our country. America Stands election coverage will begin at 7:30 p.m. Eastern on election night, November 3rd, with live results and commentary from a panel of trusted guests. When you want to hear the truth without all the noise, turn to America Stands, your only source of election coverage in the spirit of faith.
Join us for morning prayer, where we take your prayer request and agree with you in the spirit of faith. That is daily, 9:30 a.m. Eastern and 8:30 a.m. Central.
Are you interested in learning more about Kenneth Copeland Bible College? We're having a free virtual interest meeting Saturday, October 3rd at 3 p.m. Central Time, and you're invited to join us. Go to kcbiblecollege.org to sign up to attend this free virtual meeting. As you seek God for the next step, let Kenneth Copeland Bible College help prepare you for His plan in your life and ministry.
Welcome back to America Stands election coverage of the Spirit of Faith. Greg Stevens with you. And joining us now are my good friend Tim Fox.
Well, it's good to be here. You guys have had a lot of fun already. I want to get in on some of this.
Well, you're here. You're in on it. You got a guest coming up.
We do. We have someone whose organization has been very, very involved in the list that the president put out.
Okay, before we do that, tell them what we're offering again, and then.
We are offering a mini book called Founding Documents of Freedom. That's a little book we put together with some of the founding documents here in America that are really important, stuff you should always know. And it's really absolutely free. Go to govictory.com/America Stands or call 877-281-6297 and you can have yours absolutely free.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And you need to get one. Also with us is David Barton. We all know David, resident historian.
Whatever.
I was going to say the great one, but that's
I can get you coffee.
That name is taken, so I don't want to do that. And then Konni Burton is with us as well. Konni, while you were serving in the Texas legislature, you earned the nickname the Maverick. How did that happen?
Well, that's, I guess, because, I hate those kinds of questions because I don't want to talk about myself in that way.
Because she would take on the system. She was very good constitutionally. She was very good on conservative principles. She'd stand for principles, wouldn't always go along with the good old boy system. She was a maverick. She'd fight the right
things. So tell me about your news service, though.
Yes, I appreciate that. So I started a statewide media organization. We are all in the Texan right of center. All of us, philosophically, politically, we are right of center. However, our news is straight reporting of the news. We don't push narratives. We don't put out opinion as if it's a straight reporting of the news. We do what the media is supposed to do.
Old school journalism.
Idea. And hey, people seem to want it because we're doing very well. So again, we are a statewide political news organization, and we want to get the truth out there. What I'm so frustrated with, and all of us are, I saw it as an activist, I saw it as somebody who ran for office, I saw it as a senator in the state legislature, how the media, what they report on and what they don't report on, and then when they report on it, how they push more the narratives than they're talking about the story from our perspective. And when I say from our perspective, for instance, we were just talking about abortion. I don't know if you guys know this, but everybody uses an AP style book, media does, and there are words that you use, all media across the board uses. And I'm sure y'all have noticed this, but abortion is not used, it is reproductive health care, right? Now, you tell me what's health care about having an abortion, but that's the way that it's put out there. Now, we say the word abortion because that's what it is. But you see how over time, when words like this are used, how it becomes not what it really is. That's right. Another one is migrants. I don't know, everything is a migrant now, whether you're going through the system legally to become a U.S. citizen or whether you have come across the border illegally, everybody is referred to in media as a migrant.
Or freedom fighters.
Right. So it's no wonder that those of us who are for a strong border, when you read an article and, you see Republican legislators talking about migrants should go back home or what, those kinds, that's how they write it, right? You can see why people who are reading these articles tend to think that, man, these Republicans are, bigots or racists or all the things that we're called, right?
Let me ask you this, because we're going to get to this interview with First Liberty. You made a statement. When I ran for state senate in California as a Republican, I referred to myself as a conservative rather than a Republican because that means something different in California. You mentioned left, center, and right. You said you're right of center. Can you define what that is? Because a Republican in California could be left here.
Mm-hmm.
So
right.
define that.
So I mean, if you want to talk personal, I'm very conservative, right? But for our media organization, we say that we are right of center. In other words, we are not a leftist media organization that is across the board in Texas. So all of us, so I'm not even talking about on the spectrum there, as far as, whether we're very conservative or not very conservative. All I'm saying is for the organization.
So somebody that would be religious liberties and religious.
Those are the kinds of things we talk about.
Those are right? Or right?
That is, well, if you're talking, yes. And frankly, I think it should be for everybody, right? It's unfortunate how it's become a right or left
It's
issue.
interesting how that is a weird term as well in the sense of it's subjective. Because
that's why I was trying to get some.
If I have no definition of myself, and I say, I believe that life should be protected from conception. I believe that kids should be able to pray in public if they want to. And I think that you should have marriage as a man and woman if that's what you believe. If I say that, I will be labeled a conservative. Now, interestingly, if I say that in Australia, I will be labeled a liberal. Really? Because in Australia, a liberal believes exactly what conservatives believe. I don't label myself. The media labels me.
Sure.
And if I hold those views that we call traditional, religious, and moral views, I will be labeled a conservative.
So we want to get into talking about religious rights, and Tim's got that, but her website is Texan.news. Tim, you got somebody for us?
We do. We've talked about religious liberty and the Supreme Court tonight, and we've got someone that knows about both of those things tonight. First Liberty Institute is the largest organization in the United States dedicated to the preservation of the religious rights, religious freedom here in America. They've argued cases for religious freedom all the way up to and including the Supreme Court of the United States. Jeremy Dye is Special Counsel for Litigation and Communications for First Liberty, and he joins us now. And Jeremy, welcome to America Stands. And I want to start by talking a little bit about the legacy of Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Regardless of whether we agree with her decisions or her views, she, like other justices that have served on that high court, have really made a great contribution to our country, haven't they?
Anybody who will decide to serve in public service is going to make an impact on this country. And in this day and age, for someone to step up and say, yeah, I'll serve in that office, it takes a great deal of character to do so. Certainly, I have my differences of opinion with Justice Ginsburg. I really do. And I would probably be more like a Justice Scalia on those things. But I think it's good for us to model people like Justice Scalia, who said, there's things that are more important than the law or than these, political ideologies, legal ideologies that are maybe out there and differences of opinion. There are friendships and real people behind these things. And I think it's to his great credit that he was a good friend of Justice Ginsburg. And if he can be a great friend of Justice Ginsburg, then perhaps we can as well, and honor her legacy for having served this country in that manner.
Absolutely. Well, we talked about the fact that First Liberty has argued in front of the Supreme Court many, many times. What was it like for your organization to stand in front of that Supreme Court with Ruth Bader Ginsburg there? What was it like to argue in front of her?
It's an honor of a lifetime to be able to bring that case to the Supreme Court of the United States and to bring other arguments there as well. I'm remembering when we brought the American Legion case versus AHA and tried to protect that Veterans Memorial outside of Washington, D.C. We knew that Justice Ginsburg was likely not to be on our side in that case, and that's okay. We're making good arguments, and whether or not she opposes that or not, ultimately it's going to come down to the other justices that had to make that decision at the end of the day. What's interesting, though, is as you look at her dissent in that case, it was very interesting to read how she couldn't get around the true meaning of the memorial. And as Justice Alito had referenced in his opinion, yeah, sure, it's a religious monument, but that's okay. It's okay to have religious symbols on public property. And, you just need to look to your left or right there with David Barton to find out just how far back in history we go with those kinds of things. It certainly is consistent. And even Justice Ginsburg had to come to that same conclusion. She just didn't like that it was the reality.
Now, First Liberty was heavily involved in crafting that list of candidates that the president put out recently. So let's talk a little bit about a couple of the candidates that are being mentioned now for filling of the seat of Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Who do you like? I mean, obviously you like them all because you guys were a part of that list. So how strong is this list? Let me ask you that first.
Well, look, I was encouraged to see several of our volunteer attorneys on that list from over the years. These are men and women who have done a lot of great things in their professional career and are right to be recognized on that list. And perhaps you're very kind to state that we're deeply involved in that, but here's what we do. We're just lawyers. And so we have brought to anybody who will listen the information that people need to make decisions. And look, people are not unknown quantities. They have practiced law. They have volunteered their time with organizations. They have been judges and have written opinions or haven't written opinions as well. And so all we did was act like lawyers. We went out and did research, and we presented the information to those who need to make those decisions. And what resulted in that is what you see in that list of men and women who have, some of them, dedicated inordinate amounts of time to doing good things for the cause or to the conservative issues that are out there, and other men and women who have written very good opinions on things. Now, I'll quickly add that whatever the data shows, that's what we presented in the information. And some of that information was not exactly flattering either. We just wanted to provide good information to whoever would want to know.
Okay, let's talk specifically about Amy Coney Barrett. She's 48 years old. She's in the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Seventh Circuit right now. She was confirmed 55 to 43 when she was confirmed recently. Tell me your thoughts on her.
Well, look, I think she's had a good 3 years on the Seventh Circuit Court of Appeals and has had a couple of opportunities to join some very good opinions on religious liberty. I have a question mark about an educational choice measure that she joined on that bench as well. But we're all reminded of the time she spent in front of that confirmation hearing where Senator Durbin and then most vocally Senator Feinstein went after her because of her religious beliefs. And frankly, anybody who can stand up to that kind of barrage with a smile on her face and just in a very quiet way be able to look back in that storm and say, that's not right and it's not fair, I think is deserving of some credit and credibility. And I think she is one of those people. I'm reminded also that in her speeches that she's given in Washington, D.C. since that time, she's reminded people that, the role of a judge, the role of religion really has no bearing in terms of the qualification of a judge. And to ask someone, she said, to set aside their religious beliefs assumes the wrong premise of the question, because everyone has a moral basis by which they operate. And so the real premise of the question ought to be, she says, whether or not everybody's going to be able to lay aside all of their moral beliefs in whatever they do. And that's the proper frame of that kind of discussion. So I think Judge Barrett has been a good example of someone who understands the important role that religion plays in everybody's life, whether or not you are Christian, Catholic, Episcopalian, or anything else. You have moral beliefs, and to ask them to lay that aside, well, that's exactly what the Founding Fathers were getting at when they said there shall be no religious test for office. My hope is that as we see, if it's her that is nominated, we don't see any more religious bigotry expressed towards her, but rather we examine her professional credentials, which are fantastic. A clerk to Judge Silverman in the D.C. Circuit, then to Justice Scalia as well. Has spent 3 years now on the Seventh Circuit Court of Appeals and has been a longtime scholar and professor at Notre Dame Law School. I think her scholarship speaks for itself, and it trends towards the right. Look, we got to go all the way back to 1934 to find a reliably conservative Supreme Court. We may just be on the cusp of having that again now.
Praise God. Listen, I want to bring up Barbara LaGoya because she's the other name that's been floated around here the last few days. She's 52. She's in the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals. Now, what I found interesting was when she went through confirmation, she was confirmed 80 to 15. That's a pretty large margin. Would that translate into this process as well?
I think a lot of people are looking into why that might be. Look, I wish I had a lot more information on Barbara LaGoya. She's only been on the 11th Circuit for just a few months, really, at this point. She spent most of her time on the Florida Supreme Court and other state court positions. And the nature of those positions just don't really get into the constitutional concerns that you and I care so much about right now. So it's kind of an empty record. Now, what we have for the data for Judge LaGoya is very good information, and I'm encouraged by all of that. In fact, just today, as a matter of fact, in a case that the First Liberty Institute brought a petition to the full court of the 11th Circuit, it was called a petition for rehearing en banc. She joined that panel to say, yeah, we ought to rehear this case in a matter where a juror was disqualified for daring to say that he prayed about his decision. And so I'm encouraged that she joined onto that decision. And I suspect that she'll be given a lot more opportunities to prove that. You go back into her history also, she spent a lot of pro bono time working on behalf of Elian Gonzalez to make sure that he could stay in this country and would be free from the grip of Janet Reno back when that all went down as well. So there's a lot of interesting background with Judge Lagoa. I'd just like to have a whole lot more.
Yeah, I would like to get your gut feeling. Will it be one of those two, or is there another person that's been floated out there the last few days that you think might be a dark horse?
Well, I think safe money is probably on Judge Barrett. That's what pretty much everybody is suggesting it's going to be right now. It's hers to lose, perhaps, right now. Judge Lagoa would probably be the most likely next choice on that. Maybe a dark horse candidate in this would be someone like a Judge Beatty or even a Kate Todd. But I think the more likely dark horse is someone like Alice Jones Rushing, who is, I think, 38 years old, sits on the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals, which reminds me that I think I've done something terribly wrong with my career, that you've got a very stellar attorney there that's 38 and a federal judge for life now. But she's done something like 47 different briefs, I think, with the Supreme Court of the United States and volunteered her time with Alliance Defending Freedom. I think she's got a very bright future ahead of her as a jurist. And I think she could very well be that dark horse candidate that kind of, comes around the last farthing there to win it all.
Do you think it will be as contentious as we all think it will be?
Well, thankfully, 2020 has been just completely drama-free. So thankfully, we're running up right against something that might actually bring some excitement to this year. We shall see what the next 41 or so days hold for us here. If we all think that the left will just simply let the year go by and this confirmation hearing go by without any kind of challenge, I think we deceive ourselves quite well. But my hope is that, like with Justice Stevens, who was confirmed in, I think, 19 days, and Justice O'Connor in 30 some odd days, and even Justice Ginsburg confirmed from nomination to confirmation in 42 days, we've got plenty of time to take care of that between now and Election Day. And I think the Senate ought to move very quickly in doing so.
Mm-hmm. Jeremy, this is Greg Stevens. Before we say goodnight for tonight, the Vice President Biden doesn't have a list. Did you guys not make him one, or should there be a list for him, do you think?
Well, I think it says a lot that someone would not put out a list at this point, right? That there's probably something that they don't want us to know at this point. Look, I tell you this too: if Vice President Biden had asked us for our opinion, we'd be more than happy to do the research on the judges or potential nominees that he would like to put forward as well. That's what we do as lawyers. We're happy to look into the background, into the data, into the research that is out there, and provide the arguments and information necessary in order to make an informed choice. We did that for President Trump and his team. We'll do it for the Senate here in the next couple of weeks. And if Vice President Biden comes by and says we need some more information, we'll be happy to supply that information too. He may not like what we supply, but we'll certainly provide the data and point to where it goes.
So as a quick follow-up to that, were you asked by the administration to provide input for the list?
I wasn't involved in those questions. So if Jeremy Dice was asked, no, he wasn't asked by that administration. I'm sure somebody that is much more important than I am in this organization had those discussions. I don't frankly quite know how they came about. I do know, though, that we're able to provide information not only to the administration and to senators and congressmen that are asking, but to organizations all over the country that are trying to figure out how they should proceed in light of this new opening on the Supreme Court.
All right. Thank you so much, Jeremy. The website is firstliberty.org. And Jeremy, we so appreciate all that you all have done for religious freedom in this country, and keep up the good work, sir.
My pleasure. Thanks so much for having me.
All right, Greg.
All right, guys, what do you think? The thoughts about the list and Biden not having one?
Biden not having one is really significant. When you hear the rumor mill going, supposedly on the inside, the names at the top of the list are people like Stacey Abrams, and she lacks any judicial experience in something like this. And so you have philosophical folks who are more legislators or legislative oriented than you have constitution-minded folks who understand judicial restraint. And that's one reason Biden cannot come out with a list, because then the whole debate shifts to substance rather than right now it's on the personality of Trump versus anything else. So they will be attacking personalities. Mm-hmm. And the other thing that I think is really significant in this that just as background is I think this time you're going to see someone who's chosen who has a very good record. Because if you go back to Justice Gorsuch, 2 years, 150 decisions. I might disagree with 2 of those decisions, but the 2 that I would disagree with were really surprises to the administration. And as a result, they took a hit from a lot of their conservative base saying, whoa, what did you give us here? Well, I thought we had a conservative. And so even though 99% he's right on, I think this time the judges that are being looked at are judges that have a good track record. And as Jeremy pointed out, with Lagoa, you don't have that good track record. She hadn't been there long enough. With Barrett, she's been there, and we know where she is on most of her positions. And so it could be a rushing. I think a rushing is a possibility. I would go with Barrett because she has a better track record than the others, and the White House is very concerned over not having a surprise.
Right. Well, I didn't want to throw political football in there, but Lagoa is from Florida, and I don't know if I think he's got Florida. I don't think he needs to point at a justice from Florida. But what we've seen in uprisings, we mentioned it at the top of the program tonight, at the top of the hour. We talked about what's happening in Kentucky, and a lot of that is political unrest. Breonna Taylor. And this is why the rule of law and all is so important. We started today with Mike Garofalo. Mike is in Washington D.C. with us live. Mike, I want to come back to you to follow up on the news. Go ahead, Mike.
Greg, shortly after the decision came down not to charge the police officers involved in the death of Breonna Taylor, unrest broke out in Louisville, Kentucky, as well as other cities around the country. 2 officers were shot in Louisville. But then the Attorney General for the state of Kentucky came out and gave a clear explanation as to why charges were not filed. Let's take a listen to Daniel Cameron.
Criminal homicide encompasses the taking of a life by another. While there are 6 possible homicide charges under Kentucky law, these charges are not applicable to the facts before us because our investigation showed, and the grand jury agreed, that Mattingly and Cosgrove were justified in the return of deadly fire after having been fired upon by Kenneth Walker. Let me state that again. According to Kentucky law, the use of force by Mattingly and Cosgrove was justified to protect themselves. This justification bars us from pursuing criminal charges in Miss Breonna Taylor's death.
Now, so what you heard was there was justification there. The reason the officers were fired upon before they fired back. And that's not exactly what you may have heard in the media over the course of this investigation. Breonna Taylor was not asleep in her bed, as we found out. It was testified to, and the officers saw her down at the end of the hallway with her boyfriend, and then the boyfriend opened fire. Also, we've learned that the police did announce, it was not a no-knock warrant, it was concerned about a no-knock warrant there. Police made an announcement that it was officers of the law before they entered Breonna Taylor's apartment. So these are some very important things, I think, that need to get out there about some of these stories. Something else we're also talking about is mail-in ballots during this election and concern over fraud when it comes to that. The latest concern, some discarded mail-in ballots were found in Pennsylvania recently, and the president's press secretary, Kayleigh McEnany, came out and had something to say about that earlier today.
The president wants to get rid of mass mail-out voting, and that's not because he said clearly that could go either way. It could damage either candidate's chances because it's a system that's subject to fraud. In fact, in the last 24 hours, police in Greenville, Wisconsin, found mail in a ditch, and it included absentee ballots. And also, I can confirm for you that Trump ballots, ballots for the president, were found in Pennsylvania, and I believe you should be getting more information on that shortly. Here in the last 24 hours, they were found cast aside.
They were found cast aside. Not a lot of ballots, 9 ballots, but 7 of those 9 ballots were for President Trump. And, you know, the president has come under a number of levels of criticism for saying that he's concerned about the legitimacy of a mail-in ballot. But I did a report a couple weeks ago about a Democrat operative in New Jersey who talked about what he has done to alter elections, everything from making a new ballot, stealing legitimate envelopes, paying off mail carriers. So there's legitimate concern. So when the president's talking about this, he really should be listened to. I'm going to send it back to you guys.
Thanks, Mike. Listen, you're going to be with us all weekend from Washington, D.C. What's the mood there? Mood good right now by the Supreme Court?
Right now, good.
Good.
No
You'll be with us all weekend. Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say there were hundreds of people around the Supreme Court earlier, and they were still paying their respects to Justice Ginsburg, but calm.
Good.
I didn't see any protesters out here.
Good. You'll be with us this weekend. I know Franklin Graham is having a march. And then here on the network, on Victory Channel, you'll be able to watch The Return with Jonathan Cahn. And you'll be bringing us reports and interviews from there. So thank you for being there tonight, Mike. Appreciate it.
You bet.
Okay, guys, about 3-4 minutes left. Thoughts as we head into the first debate?
Oh, goodness. I'm just curious as to what it's going to be like. I mean, again, today, his campaign, what is the term, put a lid on, Biden again. In other words, he just,
called it a day early.
Yes,
he went home.
Yes,
Yeah.
basically.
President's
And
out,
there's
he's
so many of those days like this. And I don't know if it's a campaign strategy to where we'll kind of just keep him in the basement so that we don't get his gaffes out there as much. But I'm very curious as to what this debate is going to be like. I have no idea.
Well, he's good at debating. I mean,
when he's confident.
I've heard that, but when he can't make a coherent sentence most of the time, and listen, we all know it's hard to speak clearly when you've got cameras on you, but this is a guy who's been in front of cameras for many, many, many years. Right. He's been in elected office. He's been vice president of the United States. Even I, who tend to give people benefit of the doubt, have been quite alarmed at what he stated and tried to state and not come out very well.
Mike Wallace is hosting it.
Mike Wallace, and I would expect.
Will that be level field or
Chris Wallace?
Chris Wallace.
Yeah, Chris
Wallace.
Mike Wallace would be. That'd be a story.
That would be a story. That'd be a real story. Yeah, I think.
Thank you.
Chris has always been real good about asking tough questions, but asking both sides tough questions, and he's an old school journalist that does a much better job of not following sensationalism, trying to get the story. Now, I think I will not be surprised if Biden does not make the debate. I think that's a real possibility.
Sure.
I think that's a real possibility. Somebody came up around him with COVID or whatever it is. I think there's a real possibility because if he makes one gaffe,
that's right,
on national TV, that's what's going to be circulated in social media. He might be good 98% of the time, but that one gaffe will be there, and that will be tagged with everything else we've been seeing, social media stuff, and it's going to create an impression. They don't want that impression. That's a real problem. Yeah. The other thing that's very interesting right now is that as of this week, Democrats are now saying, I don't think we want mail-in ballots after.
Yes.
Really?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
See, what's happening is
I was in Victory-thon. I missed all of it.
No. It's going right now because we've been seeing in states that tried it for the first time this year, up to 20% of ballots have been disqualified. And so now you have Hickenlooper, who's running against Cory Gardner for Senate in Colorado, saying, hey, take your ballot, go deliver it in person.
Right.
Do not send it in. You make sure it gets there because those might go against us. Those things thrown in the ditch, Trump this time, might be them next time.
Connie, thank you for joining us again.
Absolutely.
What's the name of your news service?
The Texan News.
The Texan News. Any last thoughts?
No, just thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it very much.
Well, you'll be back.
I want to remind everyone that the deadline for registering to vote in a lot of states, including Texas.
He's Mr. Register to vote.
Well, I'm telling you, if you don't register, you can't get in the game.
That's right.
Registration is deadline for a lot of states, including Texas, is only about less than a month away.
And you can go to our website and get registered to vote no matter where you are. GoVictory.com/America Stands. You can find out where you need to vote. Don't forget, Tim and I will be hosting this weekend The Return with Jonathan Cahn from the nation's capital, and Brother Copeland will be on there, and Pastor Terry Pearsons will be on there. And so you don't want to miss any of that. We want you to take part in it. I believe that there really is going to something happen. They're going to blow the shofars. They're going to pray for a healing of the nation. That's what you do on Yom Kippur.
Yep.
And so join us in that. Watch for that this coming Saturday.
Coming Saturday. Right.
All right, guys. Thank you so much for being with us. We'll be back next week for the debates.
Yep.
And on America Stands. We'll see you then. Know this: God loves you. We love you, and
Jesus is Lord.
See you soon.